Gaston Antony clambered up through a window into the salon, stepping over Moreau, and seized Madame de Chiotte around the waist. She cried out in horror as he dragged her all over the room, in a grotesque parody of dance, laughing at her for trying to resist. Others laughed and clapped a rhythm for them, while Jacques Edimaqueux, not wanting to waste time, went straight for the door. Behind him, Lucien de Spatchcock tried to convince Antony not to be so, presumptuous. Now, Gaston, he insisted, that isn't very sporting of you, is it? Come on, there's a good lad, put her down. Someone jostled him from behind, and he stumbled into the shoulder of someone else, who shoved him back. Don't interfere with the happy couple, the first jostler shouted, pushing him into yet another. Others cheered and joined in, while Jacques slipped into the hallway and went looking for Brenda. In another part of the mansion, Diego de Silva came upon Jongleur and his two friends standing behind a tapestry, all 6 of their shoes in plain view under 3 very obvious bulges in the cloth. Shaking his head at them, he continued looking for a sword and settled on a black iron fireplace poker. Going back to the tapestry, he tore it aside, and the 3 noblemen cowered in fear. Holding it aloft with one gloved hand, he glowered down at them a long moment. "The woman's staying here," he snapped. "Who is she?" "Take her," Jongleur wailed. "Just take her and go." The pirate's lip curled in disgust. "Who is she?" "We don't even know," quavered Franck. "We rescued her from the ruined temple outside of Seethes." "Seethes?" "Yes, the night of the wedding." "Wedding?" "The wedding that everyone went to." "Except for us," added Jongleur. "Yes, except for us. We went to the temple instead." "The temple in the woods where a bunch of pirates fought a bunch of demons and some beast men?" De Silva asked. "Yes." "How did you know?" "Never mind. And this woman was there?" "Yes, she was in a wedding dress, covered in gravy." "With amnesia," added Crispin. "She was covered in gravy with amnesia?" "She was covered in gravy," said Jongleur, enunciating for clarity, "and she had amnesia." "In a wedding dress?" "Yes." "There were other people, too," Franck said, "with amnesia. In the gravy." "We dropped them off along the way," said Crispin. "We only kept the girl." "Well, we didn't keep the girl," cried Jongleur. "We didn't want anything to do with the girl. That was Moreau. He insisted on bringing the girl with us." "Fine, whatever. So, she might be the bride from the wedding, the one that was murdered?" The 3 noblemen stopped trembling for a minute. Well, we really haven't heard. Was she murdered, the bride? Not that we'd know about that, because we haven't been, not since that night. Well, now that you mention it, she was wearing a wedding dress, if you could call it that. It wasn't a very nice dress, was it? Maybe before it was covered in gravy. Ha! It looked to me like a Gautier, and if you ask me, I dare say covering it in gravy was an improvement. "Ahem," said the pirate. The 3 remembered that they should be trembling, and went back to it. "Did the dress happen to have a blood stain?" De Silva tapped his side with the fireplace poker. "Right around here?" The 3 noblemen frowned and looked at one another. "Might have been covered by the gravy," suggested Crispin. "Or was there a rent in the fabric?" the pirate asked. The 3 made that down-curving smile, the yes-no tilting of their heads, and sounds akin to musing. "Could have," acceded Jongleur. "Well, was there or wasn't there?" De Silva roared. The 3 shrank back against the wall, terrified. "Maybe. Yes, there was." "Good. Now where will I find a sword?" Immediately, the hilts of 3 swords were thrust upwards. With a discerning eye, he inspected all 3, finding them all to be more decorative than useful, but choosing the best of them. Taking it, he turned on his heel, letting the tapestry fall back across the nobleman, and stalked out of the room. "Ready or not, Eurydice," he muttered, "here I come." Behind the tapestry, the 3 looked at one another for a moment, then stood up straighter and sneered. "What a pleb," they said in unison. El Phantasmo dashed down the hall with his new sword, a fierce gleam in his black eyes. But when the servants' quarters hove into view, he stopped short. Jacques Edimaqueux came around the corner opposite him, and also slowed to a stop. For a moment, each appraised the other. Then the pirate's evil lips spread into a smile. Edimaqueux hadn't planned on fighting. He had tried to avoid it by running ahead of the others, and was ready to play the role of the one good suitor, here to protect Brenda and the family from the others. He'd usher them out of a back window and make a show of protecting them, thereby winning all their hearts. They'd run off and hide, and he'd be their savior. But if he had to fight, and it seemed that's what the Spanish rogue before him wanted, he would be a little more than a brief nuisance. Eddie had studied with the finest of the age, Bonetti, Fabri, Sanct, Agrippa, and Capoferro, and he'd learned well. He'd make short work of this masked ponce. De Silva unsheathed a rapier that Eddie shook his head to see. No one who knew how to fight would use such a sword. It was for show, the kind of sword presented by doting old soldiers at their granddaughters' birthdays. Jacques felt more annoyed than anything that he'd have to waste his time, but he heaved a long sigh, assumed the en garde stance, and was overwhelmed and skewered before he knew it. El Fantasmo's sword stood a hand's breadth out the small of his back, and he stared in surprise at the hilt swaying before him. His own sword was unceremoniously snatched out of his fist, and the pirate walked off to the stairs with it, satisfied. He had to stand aside when he got to the door, because a flood of aristocrats surged up the steps toward him. Glancing down the hall, he saw long shadows of running men on the wall growing shorter. Perfect timing, he thought. With a smug little smile, he bowed to the charging nobility and gestured into the hall with a sweep of his hand. Right this way. They flowed in past him, a panting stampede of powdered white wigs, beads of sweat running in rivulets down their faces and cutting beige stripes through their pale makeup. People of wax, giddy with hope, not just of being saved, but of being in the house of the Chiotte. All their fear was swept away by the joy of flooding into the mansion. Oh, the women were thinking. They'd all sit on couches, waving themselves with delicate fans, sipping wine with the Comtesse and making little of the horrors of the day. Good wine, purple as the bruises of love, maybe with poppies floating in it. Dreadful revolution, isn't it? Oh, yes, dreadful. But my, what a lovely necklace you have on, Comtesse. Do you like it? It's absolutely divine. The Comte brought it back for me from the East. Did he? And the gentlemen would strive to outdo one another in their dismissal of the danger. They'd study with the flourishes with which their companions took snuff. Would the ruffles of the cuffs ripple enough? Would they be a swallow's fight? They'd be sure to critique the manners of whoever went to the bathroom first, and each of them paid close attention to everybody else so they could have the most cutting remarks. Sheesh, De Silva thought. They just kept coming. Maybe it was only a few dozen of them, but as they poured up out of the doorway into the stairs, it seemed it would never end. In the hallway, the forerunners had already collided with the tide of suitors, and those bringing up the rear ran into them in turn. The pirate imagined the two groups looked like an accordion, all of them crushed by the crash of the people behind them. It was a shame he couldn't see it, but he was content to be its cause. The last one to come up the stairs stopped, looking wide-eyed at the commotion, making an O of her pursed lips. With an impatient snarl, El Fantasmo shoved her out of his way. A man tried to say something about it, but the pirate was out of time. In the tunnels below, his zombie bride was getting away.